Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron Channel. I'm Steve Shaw. In this video, top tips, just the tips for a big bench. Before we get into that topic, if you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. The best topic ideas, I turn into videos just like this. All right, today I am joined with Faz Lifts. Faz, where can they find you on YouTube?
Hey folks, get me at Fazlifts on YouTube, and I'd appreciate a follow. Trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers. Cheers.
Yeah, that's it. That's the end of the video. That's all we wanted to talk about. Just a plug to follow Faz on YouTube, but seriously, go follow him. So we want to talk about top tips for a big bench. This was Faz's idea, so I'm going to let him lead the dance. He sent me some bullet points, and I made some notes, so he doesn't know what's coming. So I'm going to interject a few things. But Faz, when it comes to the bench press, obviously we don't need to be super silly about it. Most people love the bench. Most people are obsessed with the bench. Most people at the average gym are doing a lot of things incorrectly. So we're not here to fix everything, but we're here to talk about some things that can help you in the long run. And the first thing you wrote down, Faz, was frequency. So have at it.
Right. So I'd say for the large majority of people, if you're not getting results with once a week training on the bench press, which would be maybe very typical if you're doing a upper lower routine or a push pull legs or a bro split, then trying to do a little bit higher frequency, so perhaps twice a week. And also understand the point that I want to make is you don't have to do it twice a week heavy. So a very common setup that I use is I'll do my rep work sort of once a week, and then I'll do some lighter kind of speed work a second time a week, a little bit reminiscent of West Side Barbell kind of training back in the day. So that style works very, very well. And you can also, if you are dedicated into powerlifting, you can perhaps expand that out into even more frequent. So you can do perhaps heavy bench press a couple of times a week, and then a lighter speed work maybe another time. Or if that's too much, pull it back to twice. But the point is you can vary the intensities. If you're increasing your frequency, it doesn't have to be heavy every single time.
Yeah, when I was at my strongest, or when I began the path towards the strongest that I've ever been, what I basically did was sell out to the big lifts and frequency training. I would keep rest days more intuitive, but benching was usually every third or fourth day, depending on how I felt. And with the heavy stuff, I would always go in and do heavy during warm-ups. And I wouldn't overkill the number of heavy sets I was doing, or number of reps I was doing. It was rather more consistency over time. And then if I would do volume work, Faz, I would do back offs. And this is something I pass along to my clients a lot, where they might go in and work up to the heavier first set, and then they back off and get more volume. At my peak, I was doing a daily daily heavy set, depending on how I felt. It could have been 405 for a triple or 365 for 7 or whatever. But then I would back off to 315 by max, 275 by max, 225 by max, etc. So I didn't do that every day, but it was a way for me to work in volume. But I want to touch a little bit more on that. You talk about the use. One of your points here is the use of singles, doubles, and triples. That's a brave new world for a lot of people. And I want to ask you, Faz, at what point, is there a certain strength standard they should try to get themselves up to before they start messing with singles, doubles, or triples?
Yeah, so I think this is where I need to explain this a little bit. So I'm not looking at max or close to max singles, doubles, and triples. So actually my setup when I was at my strongest was very similar to Steve's. I would work up to a top set and I would back off with some volume. However, my top set looked a little different. For those of you familiar with my channel, you'll know the concept of the over warm-up. So I would go to a top single, double, triple for the day, which would be submax. If you guys are familiar with the training max concept, that's kind of what my over warm-up is based on. So my top sets would be, and where I'm using the singles, doubles, and triples, would be submax. And then I would back it down with my working sets, which were using higher reps, usually like 8s, 5s, or 3s. And that's kind of where I would do the majority of my rep work. So I think the judicious use of singles, what they do is they teach you how to handle maximum weights for a single, and they get you in the groove. And I think it's something which can be used as a way to keep in touch with heavyweights, but also to make your working sets feel a bit easier. So in that respect, we had a relatively similar setup, except my top sets were sub-maximal, and that's probably why I could get away with singles, doubles, and triples for those top sets.
Yeah, one thing that we need to stress here is I've done my fair share of singles, doubles, and triples over the years, and they weren't max reps. They were maybe a 4x2 program, or today I'm going to go in and my bench was say around 430. I would go in and just see how many singles I could get at like 365 or something like that. It wasn't max rep sets, so that point needs to be understood. There was another point I was going to make, but I forgot. But maybe my brain will jog it. But one thing I'll say, Faz, is that getting comfortable under heavyweight is so important.
Right.
And I work with a lot of people. They'll get to a certain point and something feels heavy fast, and they'll say, I'm going to continue to use this weight until it feels lighter. Like you'll get a early intermediate that'll get to 60-pound dumbbell benches and say it feels heavy. I'm going to stay around that weight. When in reality, that's probably a good time to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure. If I just piggyback on that point and just sort of bring you back to what we were saying, I think one, you've got to be comfortable with those heavy weights, and I think doing the over warm sort of helps that. And then I think building the large majority of your strength with a higher volume base is probably a good idea. So building strength is a weird thing. You build the strength, in my opinion, with a higher base of volume. Right. But you need to maintain the ability to actually execute and be comfortable with heavier weights, which is, what Steve's saying. So you've got to be able to do both. This is why I like the over warm up followed by the rep work. So.
Yeah, so I actually put a point in bold next to Faz's commentary about singles, doubles, and triples, and while that can help the average individual get comfortable a little bit and provide some benefit, the addition of volume is also of benefit, because I find not enough benchers are doing enough volume.
Yeah.
In such a low rep world when it comes to the concept of strength training, and I built my strength with volume, as did a lot of the lifters in the 70s and 80s. And even modern lifters like the Lillibridges, I know what their off-season training program is an incredible amount of volume. So, volume, I find piggybacking or doing heavy work with volume work to be extremely beneficial. One of my most successful programs, Faz, was what I call 5-10-10-20, where you would take a weight that's approximately 20% of your 20 rep max using a calculator. You go in, you do a 5 rep set with that, 2 10 rep sets with that, and then when you get to 20 weight, so it's not magic, but I would get people doing a lot more volume than they were comfortable with or used to. And combining that volume with the heavy work, I think is a great path forward.
I think I recently started subscribing to Alpha Destiny, and he made that point, which made me happy. He was saying people misconstrue. They think that powerlifters do low rep, low volume workouts, but nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, you and I are both saying it. We've both competed in powerlifting for many years. You build your strength with high volume. But as I say, this is why it's quite nice to stick in some singles, doubles, and triples. But we have to put the caveat in to say it's just to make sure you have the ability to handle the heavyweight. But the building has got to be done with volume.
Right. And as an endpoint, I had Stan Efforting on last year or a half ago, and we both hit this home. Like, the concept of off-season doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So, Faz, best variations to support the bench press. I got a list of things that work for me, but I want to hear your thoughts.
So I'll tell you guys the exact big 3 that I just pounded for the majority of my powerlifting career. I did some variations, but these were the top tier ones. So to build the powerlifting squat, it was the high bar squat. High bar beltless squat was the absolute number one thing for me. I found that I was able to train it more frequently for more volume and more often. So it just meant that I was able to build the musculature associated with the competition squat much better. So that was for the squat. For the competition style bench press, wide grip bench, I did the close grip bench. For me, for my biology, that worked the best. I was able to train it more frequently with more volume, which led to more gains. And for the deadlift, it was the stiff leg deadlift, beltless, no belt. And I know you'll disagree with me on this one, Steve, but it was touch and go for the large majority of it, but that allowed me to get more volume and I could recover from it more frequently. And that was how I built the majority of my strength in the big three competition lifts. So yeah, my point with variations is just pick ones which allow you to lift the movement safely for high volume and hopefully for more frequency as well. That will tend to get you better results.
So, Faz, I want to dive into a quick point before I get into the movements that help me on bench, and that is a lot of people that come to me have actually a close grip or a grip that's closer than close grip, and they aren't even using a grip that would be legal in competition. So, when it comes to training the bench, you need, like for me, pinkies on rings is close grip, and for me, middle finger on rings is normal grip. Now, if you look at it, middle finger and pinky finger, that's like 2 inches, right? That's the difference between my close grip and my wide grip. But most people, would you agree or disagree that it would be beneficial for them to have both close grip and wide grip training in if they don't have it already?
Yeah, 100%, definitely. I think everyone should aim to try, if they're powerlifting, they should aim to go as wide as possible. For general development, if you're looking to build your chest, the wider grip version is always going to do a better job. As long as it's safe for you to use, then yeah, it's going to do a better job of that for sure.
So I want to repeat that. Wider grip, what, Faz? I'm going to make you repeat it because I heard you, but I want to make you repeat this because this is important.
I think wider grip for build bigger pecs.
Okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to stop you there. Faz, when it comes to building the bench press, every video talks about triceps and lockout strength. How many videos talk about building a bigger, stronger chest?
Yeah, come on, guys. With that, I remember years ago, there was this whole thing about the quads not being built for the squat. Like, if you want a big squat, you got to build everything else. Like, come on. Let's look at the prime mover of the movements here. The bench press, the prime mover is the pecs. So let's use the pecs. Squat, prime mover is going to be the quads and your ass. So let's build those.
Yeah. So one thing I like to stress when I talk about building a big bench press is, like, everybody talks about triceps and shoulders and this and that and bench variations, but very few people talk about the chest itself. So that's an important point to keep with you as you move forward. For me, Faz, and there was a study recently about how chains are beneficial for building top end strength. Shocker, right? But chains, when I was at my strongest, I used chains. Like, I was chains obsessed. I was overload obsessed. I was using chains with the slingshot, and everybody was like, "You're an idiot." And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be a strong idiot. But I was just kind of going intuitively. But chains worked really well for me. The overload, and along with that, the bench press slingshot worked. Load doesn't have to be every workout. You could use the slingshot during your heavy overload, or rotate it in. And I found that chest movements like the guillotine bench, dips to a lesser degree, and the dumbbell bench and guillotine bench really worked well for me. And Faz, I'm not sure if you care about the guillotine bench or used it, but what I would do is I would bring the bar to, I don't know, maybe 4 inches from my chin. I'd have the arms flared, and I would really get a good pec stretch. And it wasn't really low. It wasn't shoulder dangerous, but that's a variation I used a lot.
Yeah, I think I've done similar things with the dumbbell bench, but if I was to do that, I wouldn't go all the way down. Just keep it, like you said, a few inches off the chest, just to protect that shoulder. But yeah, no, definitely anything that puts stress on the pecs, you've got to be big all over, really. So when I was at my strongest, that was what I was trying to do, is build everything up. So yeah.
So last point you have on here, Faz, is probably going to confuse some people because they don't equate this press strength, but it is body weight. So why don't you touch on that?
I found that the bench press in particular was highly dependent on body weight. So I started off as an 82.5 kilo lifter, so about 185 pounds in that category. And at the time, I think my best lifts were about a 500 squats. I'm trying to work in pounds here. About a 500 squat. I'd done a 320 or so bench press, and deadlift was relatively moderate as well. So, but as I moved up weight categories, the biggest jump was in the bench press. So when I moved to just over 200 pounds, 93 kilo category in England, the bench press took the biggest leap, because I found after a certain point, I was just getting a lot of size up top. And you can only be, for me, for my biology at least, I could only get so big in the 185 pound class. If I moved up past 200 pounds to about 205, 210 pounds, I just got a lot bigger. And that's where I eventually was my strongest and I hit my biggest bench presses. So I happen to think personally, and from what I've seen, the bench press seems to be very dependent on body weight. And you'll see this if you ever start a cutting diet, that seems to be the first lift to lose strength. Rather than the squat or the deadlift. I'm sure there are reasons for that, but so I thought with body weight, ultimately, if you are stagnating, particularly in the upper body pressing area, it may be a case of just moving up a little bit and just trying to add some body weight. I think a lot of people sometimes get obsessed with trying to be strong at a low body weight. Well, the goal is to add some muscle, right? So.
Well, it's any of my clients right now that are watching are like, they've heard this 1,000 times from me during cuts. Like the bench press suffers the most. And Faz and I didn't, conspire before this video to talk about this. It's just something I've learned over the years, that one thing I've always taught, and no one's ever came to me, it's that if you're inconsistent in calories, your bench is probably going to suffer the most. Yeah. And if you're on a cut, the bench is probably going to suffer the most. Obviously, you will see some squat drop off, but the bench, you tend to notice it the most. And one of the biggest tips that I have for people that want a big bench press is a consistent calorie intake and a slow, steady weight creep over time. If you do that, like if you're a 165 pound guy and you want to get your bench press up to 315, you're better off slowly creeping that body weight up, maybe to 195 over 3-4 years. And that sounds like a lot of time, but at the end of the day, most guys never really get to a 315 bench. Once you get there, you're pretty much set for life. Mm-hmm. So eat your food and be consistent. Yep. So Faz, anything else we missed, or anything that got jogged up in your noggin during this amazing discussion?
I think one last one, which is a bit of a shout out to a couple of my clients who are going through this at the moment. Just understand that progress is ultimately going to be slow, especially if you're not particularly gifted at a lift. But if you're progressing, then you're moving forward, and just tally up where you would be in a year's time. That's the way I like to think about it. So if you're making, £5, £10 worth of progress per month on a lift, it might not sound like much, but let's look where you'll be 10 months from now. So just understand that as long as you're moving forward, you're doing all right.
Yeah, and my one thing to add to that before we drop off is the word plateau. Forget that word and replace it with math. What you need to do is look at the math. Once you get to, say, I don't know how many people that are in the 185 for 6 reps on bench, and they're like, I'm completely plateaued. And when you dig into that, they're adding 1 to 2 reps a month. If you look at a 1 rep max calculator, the addition of a rep on your top set is like 5 pounds to your max. So you're not plateauing. You really need to understand that. And the important reason for stressing this is so people do not waste time jumping from bench program to bench program hopping, when in reality they were making nice, steady progress. They just needed to be patient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect.
All right, that's it, guys. Please head over to Faz Lifts on YouTube. We're going to try to do a video every week. Next week, we're going to aim for a 2-part series. Part 1 will be on my channel. Part 2 will be on Faz's channel. If you have any suggestions for Faz on a series, head over to his YouTube and drop a comment. So, guys, hope this video has been of some help. If you have any questions drop them down below. If you made it this far in this video and have yet to subscribe to my channel, please do. I'd appreciate the support. I've said that like 2,000 times over the years, Faz. And sometimes you get in the middle of it and, it's just like a robot and you forget the things you say. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks, Faz. We'll talk to you next time.